What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Hey Huzi, where we talk about all things AI, and sometimes we discuss other things, and usually makes the conversation a little bit more entertaining. But today we have Eric Post again, the founder CEO of Huzi.ai, and we're going to be talking about really AI and all things science, SaaS, enterprise. It's going to be pretty exciting. The reality is, for every tech leader we have right now, your company's typically sitting in the dark data center. Patterns in the churn, the signals in your code, the opportunities in your market that no human analyst really has the bandwidth to see. We aren't just talking about writing emails faster, even though you can do that. We're talking about AI acting as your chief scientist, running simulations, predicting, product market fit, finding efficiencies to be able to rewrite your P&L. Don't do that, but it's possible.
Wait a minute. Maybe they do. Maybe they should. Who knows? We'll talk about that, I'm sure.
So when we talk about like building software faster, especially you being in the space of building a software that helps elevate our lives, be able to expedite a lot of our research and our capacities to be able to do things at a lightning speed. I look at solutions that we couldn't even conceive, 5 years ago, let alone 10, 20, 30 years ago. It's increasing our human potential, our human processing potential and power. And so, when we look at this exponential speed trap, some of those are very concerned because it's going at a pace that makes things almost alarming. But for us geeks on the other side of the spectrum, I find this incredibly exciting because—
What do you mean us geeks? Wait, what happened? How'd you?
Okay, I'm the geek. Okay,
Yeah, how'd you do that already?
I'm
kidding. I'm kidding. Maybe I'm a geek. I don't know. I don't even know what that means.
Do you think that, I guess let's start this off by saying, because of this exponential rise, do you see a bottleneck in terms of how quickly something can come into market?
Well, from what angle? So, like, if we want to talk from the science and research angle first.
From science and research angle, yeah.
We'll start with that first, and we can move to your other parts of the question then. For the first time, we have tools that generate plausible scientific theories faster than we can test them. So the bottleneck actually moves from ideas to experiments. It was like, ooh, is there an interesting idea to follow? And then you'd have that interesting idea to follow, and you'd come up with your experiments and whatnot to solve for that. Well, now we can generate really fascinating, plausible scientific theories faster than we can test them. And so that's the bottleneck now. We've kind of, AI shifted science from a hypothesis first to a pattern first. We discover weird connections at scale, and then only later then invent theories to explain them. So the speed at which AI is able to inject itself into an industry, it's creating these really wild shifts that we didn't predict. So the bottleneck is generally in our ability to keep up with it. But I will say that speed is seductive. You talked about speed at the top of the thing here at this question. Speed's really seductive. And as the world speeds up, the algorithm demands your participation in that speed almost. It demands your participation in pumping out more content or running more experiments or keeping up with the Joneses or keeping up with the competitors. I think that's the wrong approach. I think that's the way to get swept up and get swept to the path towards mediocrity, like towards maximizing towards the things that don't matter. What is it? I think it's Goodhart that has the theory that the metrics that you're maximizing towards becomes the worst possible metric because it now puts blinders on to you. Like I've talked about before in mountaineering, getting to the top of the mountain and maximizing your experience to getting to the top is the wrong metric. You need to maximize your experience towards getting home. Getting to the top of the metric, mountain just is part of the process, but maximizing to that experience is why most mountaineering accidents happen on the way down because they achieved their goal. They didn't get home safely. Like that is part of this issue that speed is a seductive temptress to like bring us into this without a thoughtful approach to why are we rushing towards efficiency? Why are we rushing towards automation? Why are we rushing towards producing more content at scale? Why is that happening? And nobody's really stopping to pause and be like, oh, maybe I should be the rock in the river and not just jump in and start floating with it. Maybe I should carve out my space here and just become this boulder and let the water just rush over me and not get caught up in the stream like everybody else. I think that's really, I think more and more people are starting to think that way, and I am for sure. In fact, I wrote about that in my book, actually, is that exact analogy about not getting rushed into the river and becoming a rock that your customers and friends can find safe harbor in. Create a little stillness for those around you, your employees, your friends, your family, your community. If you can create that stillness, I think that's a good thing to be doing right now.
Fantastic. Real quick, while we're on the subject, where can people listen or read your book?
So I just posted at ericpost.ai. So you can connect with me there, and there's all sorts of like fun features on there. But the book that I wrote, is really a manifesto for the AI age, and it's really why it's called The Empty Room and the Empty Chair. And the idea is why the race to zero friction, meaning automation of sorts, is a race to zero feeling. And if we have zero feeling in our processes and in our businesses and in our lives, then what's the point of the whole thing? Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of warning about that seduction that's so tempting in a capitalist Western culture society to automate our ways right out of the relationship. And basically the header quote that I put on my website is that to optimize a relationship is to end it. Right. And yet people are trying to optimize everything. I don't want an optimized friendship. I don't want optimized art. I don't want optimized food, like the roughness of being real that I talk about in the book is what makes things worth holding on to and what makes things memorable. I think back to my best vacations with my family. We think about things where there's like a little bit of challenge, like the bus was late, the plane was delayed, and so we had to do this thing at the airport, right? Or it was a really rough day on the water or whatever. Like you remember those days. That roughness of being real is memorable. And I just want to be an advocate for that as we kind of rush towards AI automation in this society.
Speaking of rushing things, everything that's going at this pace, do you feel like we're actually bringing more good things to market, or do you believe that we're just coming up with 10x more bad ideas? Like there's not enough thought into this process that we're trying to implement, just across the board in generality speak.
I think that I'm going to answer this question like a thought experiment. You don't have to just guess at it. We can look back in history. We've talked about this low on the podcast, like the example of the photograph and whatnot. We know that when there's something new that hits the market, if you lower the bar of accessibility towards it, then of course you're going to get a whole bunch of mediocre or less production of whatever that thing is. So if it's social media content, if it's AI generated slop images, if it's just prototype websites that anybody could use on Replit and Bolt, it doesn't mean they're good. It just means you just it's more accessible now. And so I think when that happens, of course, everyone rushes to it and tests it and says, I'm the genius. And then what happens is the cream rises to the crop, to the top. And so we talk about often that AI is an amplifier of what you already are. And it doesn't necessarily, unless you use it in a very particular way, it doesn't upskill you. You have to be intentional about it upskilling you. Because if you are not a senior developer prototyper or product manager, you're going to think that your vibe coded apps are genius because you've never been able to do that before. But in fact, when the rubber meets the road, there's a lot to be desired still because you're not the expert at it. And if you're not the expert, you can't build expert products using it. So, I do think that there's a lot of just slop that's produced, but that's okay. That's part of the process. And then the economies of scale will dwindle down and people will lose out because somebody better than them will use the tool better than they are. And so they'll just lose out based on the competitive market. So
awesome. Thank you for that. When it comes to product science, in terms of like materials, AI finds perhaps new battery materials, new materials for X, being able to do this, it's going to be more optimized. And then we're trying to figure out how we can help discover these capabilities that we didn't know we were even possible because now we have this like mega brain that can help us decipher it. I always find that to be interesting. It's, let's say 50, 75 years in the future, we're sitting in this machine that it diagnoses what your issue is and then it just fixes you, 99.999% of the time. Mm-hmm. Do you think that we're starting to get into an age or an era where I just see it kind of this iteration starting to really multiply? Yeah. My only concern is where does the bottleneck come?
That's a super simple one because there's two bottlenecks. Like innovation can only happen at the speed of adoption. And so, the rate at which this innovation can enter society is really only the impact that it has. It's, innovation doesn't have impact unless it has adoption of some sort, right? So it has to be able to trickle down into our systems somehow. But the problem is that we're trying to regulate AI capabilities with laws that move at the speed of humans, but in a domain where scaling laws move at machine speed. Okay. And so the pace of innovation has rapidly increased, but our archaic institutions of law, legal, judicial, education have not changed at that same speed. So
Okay.
we also live in a world where we are heavily governed by not just laws, but the effects of insurances, right? Can you get insurance for things in your business to do things that are innovative? Is there a policy that covers you in this way? Is there laws that protect you or your customer, or who is it? Are these things thoughtfully brought to market, or is it just speed because first to market is supposed winner? So, I think the bottleneck is on the adoption by and acceptance by the public, and then also the bottleneck is in the regulation or the financing of it as it gets to market as well. So those two distinct bottlenecks will stifle, the rate at which AI could actually have a macro impact. It's going to have these micro impacts, and then obviously those will trickle down. But it just doesn't. It's not instantaneous. They have this discovery. They have this thing. Well, now we have to go through our society-based process for evaluating it, insuring it, finding a way to monetizing it, distribution channels, and bringing it to market. So yes, rate of innovation has increased, but I don't think the rate of bringing things to market necessarily has.
Okay, so a little bit more philosophical in question, but do you see that archetype of structure ever changing? Like, don't we need to adapt to be able to help with this innovation process? Like, we can't just keep, going in circles forever, or maybe we can. I don't know.
I think that we do. By the way, if you really see humanity from stepping out, we do the same things. It just looks differently. What's the kind of philosophical law about like relationships? Like you keep meeting the same person over and over and over until you learn the lesson. Right? They just look different, but it's the same person over and over and over because you invite that into your life because you're the same person. If we're the same society, the decades come and go, we keep doing the same thing over and over and over, right? They just are expressed a little bit differently. We have the same fallibilities. We don't treat our fallibilities. They just kind of get hidden a little bit and then they pop up with new clothing on. So, then that's not to be pessimistic. That's just to be, again, an observer of the way things are. I think that, in our society, unfortunately, a lot of things are tied to money. So, if it could be, if there's money to be made at it, I think that the speed of which things change are affected. If it has an impact on the quality of food on your plate, that's going to be much slower. And I don't think that's pessimistic either. I think that's kind of a good way to observe things. And I don't know if there's a lot of examples that would prove that overarching theory to be totally misguided in any way. It's an opinion for sure, but I think that's pretty well based in a macro observation of just the way we are as a society. So knowing that to be true, then let's operate underneath that knowledge, right? We don't have to swim upstream, to use the example earlier. We can still work with the dynamics, that we know about. The problem is, like, I read a book called Ishmael. I remember, like, one of the few college courses I actually took when I was in the Marines. I took some, community college. I read this book called Ishmael. And I remember, man, this is recounting now 30 plus years ago, but about this particular moment where there's, you don't know the difference between falling and flying until you hit the ground if you don't know what aerodynamics are. Yeah. Right? Is essentially the premise. And so society doesn't really know what the aerodynamics are of AI or this technology are. We're figuring it out. We're kind of the early age of learning what aerodynamics were. Right? And so falling and flying look the exact same until you hit the ground. It's the exact same sensation even until it's too late to know any different. So I kind of look at it as the same thing. Like, we don't really know until it's almost too late in some of these examples. And we go, oh, damn, the stove is hot. Let's not touch that again. Let's do it differently this next time. Right? With AI, people do talk about, though, that's a bad way to govern this whole thing, a bad way to look at it, because if it's too late, can you pull back an AI that's now got bad intentions, right? I don't think that to be a case at all. I don't think you can have a wildly smart AI for the things that I've talked about before and also have a wildly mischievous AI. Those two things aren't aligned. It's the people wielding the AI that is the concern, not the AI itself.
Yes.
So I still retain agency over that thing. This is the same thing that forks don't make you fat. You do, right? The fork doesn't make you overeat. You keep using the fork too much or use it improperly, and that's what makes you fat. Same sort of thing. I believe that to be true. I don't believe a gun by itself causes harm. The person with a gun causes harm, right? So, and people will argue and say, well, it's accessibility to the guns that cause the harm. It's a problem in the same way accessibility to AI causes harm. No, that's factually also inaccurate, because you look for the places that have the most lowest gun violence also has the laxest gun laws in many cases. So in some of the places that have the most restrictive gun laws have the highest rates of gun violence. And so it's a cultural issue, not an accessibility issue. Same thing with AI. It's a cultural issue that we're talking about, not an accessibility issue. So I still believe in the retaining agency over our ability to control this thing in some way or have it affect each other in some way. But it's not Mo, I just don't, I don't think that I'm the fully most qualified person to give any more than an opinion on this. So there's my opinion on it.
Well, no, listen, I
love
what
these
is
questions,
really,
though.
I mean, what is an expert really, right? Like even like that term is in itself is a very fickle term in my experience. Like you can be doing something for 50 years of your life and you've done it so well that you can, it's like the back of your hand, but it doesn't necessarily qualify you as an expert. So I like to loosely say that these are all opinions, but it is backed by day-to-day experience living in that specific field. Plus, you're a very observant thinker. And so that tends to give us a little bit more clarity, especially when I'm asking these questions and people that are listening in. One thing that I found interesting in this whole paradigm shift of AI is this lost knowledge arc. Like when we look at software, for example, like Wiki, Slack, we're losing knowledge. I've always found like if one thing that AI could really do well is helping teams, companies, organizations, individuals remember what they already know. What was that saying? Like you don't need to be taught, you need to be reminded. A lot of times. I don't know who said that. That is one of the greatest use cases for AI. And if you're seeking to ask questions, I mean, I don't know. What do you think? Do you think that that's a reasonable cure for this lost knowledge arc, so to speak?
Okay, so fun thought experiment. I like to give long-winded answers. If you go to let's say a contemporary country music festival today, and you look at what the women there are wearing, it's like there's clones everywhere. It's clones that lost this art of this individual nature because of Instagram or Pinterest, right? And so everyone sees the thing that they like, the way human beings work. That's why memes are popular, right? Because it plucks a certain string, a certain tune, in humanity. It just goes ring, and it just resonates throughout. And so a little outfit, with the cowboy boots and the jean shorts and the white, frilly shirt and the cowboy hat, and like you see it like duplicated over and over and over. So social media, long-winded answer to start to paint the picture of the way social media is and the way AI is, it can be a mind virus, and then it stops the diversity of thought because it's implanted the thing that's just too seductive not to think about or not to dress like, or not to aspire towards, right? Because you're sedated, like, oh, that's good enough. Like, I see that, that's cute, I'm just going to do that. And you're not thinking for yourself, not going in your own closet and picking out your own gear and doing the thing is like, ooh, this matters to me. I want to, instead of aspiring towards another person, you want to aspire towards yourself. And that's the same thing is happening with thought, right? So people are sitting down and they're delegating their thought leadership to ChatGPT. They're saying, act like a social media marketer and create my social media content, right? They're not saying like, if I wanted to be a social media expert, what would be the things that I needed to know? They're not inverting the relationship. They're delegating to it and not treating it like a thought partner. And that's the same thing that's happening. So when you talk about this degradation of thought or the degradation of like ideas, you can see that, and I think that's fine. But that's why I say this is a gap creator. There's the top quartile that are not thinking about it that way. They're not using it that way. They're using it like I explained in the second example. And so you're going to see this really dramatic widening gap between thought leadership and those that have offloaded their thought leadership to an AI. Yeah. So I think that's one of the downsides of it. If you're on the one side, not the other. It's an upside to some, it's a downside to others. Does that answer your question?
It does, yeah. And it kind of brought me to another one. Are we still in an age where we really have to qualify and iterate this stuff? Or are we having those availabilities and tools within, like Huzi's specific Canvas tool that allows you to really kind of dynamically experience this almost like a multi-thread system? Can you explain that a little bit? Because I know that there have been some updates, there's been things that are coming into play, but I've been using it more and more, and I've noticed this. So I just want to, for people that are out there that are maybe just kind of like, I don't know how to use this stuff, this would be a good segue.
Yeah. So first of all, if you don't know who you are and what you want to get done, then of course it's going to be confusing. Like, what would I use AI for? Right.
Yeah, that was such a long-winded way to ask you a question. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I love it, man. I appreciate the details, and it gives me a chance to think. Because one thing I think, hopefully it's obvious to everyone's listening, like we don't plan these conversations ahead of time. So this is a real organic conversation. I don't know the questions ahead of time. So I love this because it's really great thought experiment for me, and I got to be on my toes here. But the thing about large language models is that they're not trained to be right. They're trained to be plausible, and there's two different objectives.
That's interesting. Right? I've never heard that. They're trained to be plausible, not right. So then why do people assume that they're right? Like I'm assuming that this is correct up to an extent. That's not necessarily plausibility.
We've built models that think in text without any zero lived experience. Like they have zero lived experience in their thinking in text, and we interpret the text in our own lived experience. And so, you read a generation from ChatGPT and it means something to you different than me, different to Sue, different than Betty, different than Mary, because we project our lived experience onto what we understand to be true. And if you don't believe that to be true, go look in this comment thread on social media. Just this morning, there was somebody that posted like normalize shaming men for blah, 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 blah. I'm like, how about we normalize not shaming men or women sort of thing? That was literally just, my comment. Underneath is like, oh yeah, well they couldn't just read it just as I meant it. Why don't we just normalize not shaming men or women? But people were reading it with their own lived experience, projecting what they thought it meant based on if they were to have written that, what they think it should mean, because that's what they want their worldview to mean. It wasn't what I meant at all, right? And so we do that same thing when we read these generations coming out of the AI, and you can't understand anything, a relationship with your mom, a relationship with your AI, better than you can understand yourself. Okay. So discernment becomes the number one most critical skill, I think, that we should be teaching in schools, and we should be like really honing in on ourselves and focusing on our soft skills, not so much as on our hard skills, our personal development. I talk about this all the time. This is the time to really focus in on your personal development, or else it's going to be really easy to be tricked by AI, because it's just words, and words are spells. Words are the only thing, Mo. If I were to sit here and I tell you a story, you can imagine what I'm telling you in your mind. I'm literally planting a movie in your mind with the words that I use. Okay? AI is doing the same thing. It's just generating words that then we attach meaning to them. Mm-hmm. And so that's the danger part, and that's why people are like starting to have different psychoses, or they're starting to form relationships with their AIs, which I think is bonkers, but it's true.
That's insane.
It's insane. It's a huge thing now. As a matter of fact, one of the biggest use cases for teens and under in their AI usage is for companionship. Talk about the loneliness epidemic. So, they're reading just words that a computer is tokenizing and just producing the next plausible response. And yet that 9-year-old in their bedroom at night is like, oh my God, this thing really gets me. It really understands me. And they don't have that level of wisdom and discernment yet. They're a small little young mind. And I think a lot of adults have a small little young mind when it comes to discernment too, if I'm being honest about that. So that is the peril of it, that these machines are producing language, and language moves people. Martin Luther King moved an entire world with a speech. I have a dream. He's up there. He gave a speech and changed history with a speech. Words are so powerful. So these large language models, people just like, oh, it's just a large language model. It's not AI. I'm like, it's planting ideas and concepts in the minds of people as they use them. This is very powerful technology. You can't just say, oh, it's a large language model. It's not really AI. I'm like, it's making words that people are reading and attaching meaning to, and then prompting them to take action. It's very powerful.
Let's get into a little bit more of the rapid fire stuff, because I don't want to keep you too long. This has been great for a non-technical person, and you are a non-technical founder that became a technical founder, right? And so I think you're the perfect person to ask. And I'm sorry if that seems, I'm not trying to downplay your intelligence and your skills. That has nothing to do with that.
I'm a non-technical founder, 100%. No, I agree.
Yeah. And you just learned this, like it's miraculous. Like you learn how to code, you learn how to do. It's just crazy to me. So, as a non-technical founder that became a technical founder, like, what is it like running an AI company? And you don't have to get too deep, but what is that feeling? Because I don't think people realize, like, it's just wild to me, especially if you don't come from that space.
First of all, I still am a non-technical founder. I just have learned a lot over the last 3 years, about the technical side of this business, even just basic websites, basic code languages and whatnot, front end, back end stuff. But truly, I hope people hear me that this whole revolution of AI is a right brain initiative. It's not a left brain initiative like people are thinking. The people that think of the logical programmer types are the ones that have an advantage in it. Now it's the right brain initiative. AI is a thought creator, and it allows you to iterate through ideas faster. It allows me, like with products like Canvas, where I can think about things in a 3D space. I can think about things at multiple different ways of looking at an idea or a concept, and so it's a right brain thing. And gosh, I forget the book. I mean, I read it decades ago. I think it's an old book, but the title of the book, and I can't remember the author of it, we'll have to look it up and give it some credit in the show notes, is Why Right Brain Thinking Will Rule the World, I think is the name of the book. I read it like 2 decades ago. And the premise was that left brain thinking is a zero-sum game, essentially, that optimization, that linear thinking, that sort of race towards efficiency and functionality is a zero-sum game. And then we left to the question, well, now what? Well, now it's all the right brain stuff. It's all the creativity, and it's all the problem solving, and it's all the human connection, and it's all thinking in the spatial, awareness. It's art. It's in the human spirit of creativity. That's the then what. Not creating how fast can we get a customer off the phone. It's how long can we keep them in moments of delight. Right? Those are two different ways of thinking about how to use AI. AI has created almost every process to be incredibly efficient. So that now, if you're not running an efficient business, you're not running a business at all. So then is the now what? Now what differentiates your business? It's got to be efficient. It's got to be effective and expedient. But now what? And those are all right brain sort of questions.
That's fantastic. That makes me happy as a right brainer myself.
Good.
A little biased there, but
good.
Good. All right, I have a couple of technical questions for you.
Okay.
For our rapid fire here. In terms of enterprise apps, are you open source like Llama or closed source more open AI?
You mean is it for what do I believe to be a good?
Yeah, like specifically from your viewpoint, from your role.
Well, I think giving access to open source is important, but not that doesn't mean have to be open weights. That's where your secret sauce is. So having access to open source models is important. I think that there are some conversations around like, is AI and this specific LLMs, is that the technology that will give us AGI? And people are saying no. Some people are saying yes. Like that's why they're trying to still like scale the current system, and they think that that's a path to AGI. I don't think it is, but I think it's the on-ramp to it. I think that it will produce the ideas and the technology and the concepts and the strategy for it. So I think when you increase intelligence that quickly, it will show you the next path. You take one step into the forest, you don't know what the forest looks like. The whole forest, you got to keep walking through it. And I think that the LLM in this current iteration is just like helping us walk through the forest so we can see it a little more holistically. And then I think we'll find the path to AGI. I don't think it is, but long-winded answer to I think it's open source, but I don't think a company should be open weights. I think that's part of why you need to make money is your secret sauce of how you use it.
All right. In 3 years, do you think we're still going to be Googling or we're just going to be asking an AI agent?
Yeah, no, that ship has already sailed. Quickly. Like in the real estate space, Realtor.com just posted a statistic that it was something like 81% of people, are now using AI to research some sort of home ownership or some sort of real estate market news or about their mortgage. Like that's a big percentage of people. The statistic that people should really understand is that over 90% of AI searches don't result in a click through to a website. They're called zero-click searches. I think the exact stat is 93%, the last stat I saw. So 93% of AI chats don't result in them going through to check your website. You have a middleman now between your company, your website, and AI. I keep saying this, that the internet has moved so quickly from a place of search to a place of conversation. And the middleman is the AI that your customers are having a conversation, not searching for menus, rates, hours, things, listings, things like that.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Remote work, and this would be unique for our situation, but do you think it's good for innovation, or do you believe that it kills serendipity overall?
So we're all remote at Huzi. If I had to do it again, I probably would not be remote.
Really?
Yeah, and I think there's some VC firms now that are starting to see that they won't even invest in a remote startup company. It's pretty hard to manage. It's hard to hold people accountable. I think we do a great job because I have great people and we got a great team that I can trust that are interested in the project and interested in doing a good job. I think we've got decent.
But you're saying
systems.
perhaps like once it grows to a little bit bigger scale, that's where things, because now you're just adding more variables, and that's where it can kind of get
There
lofty.
is. I'm torn on it. Honestly, like I like the hybrid approach. Like if I could be in the office for 2-3 days a week with all you guys, I would love that. And I think that there's just so much that happens naturally through osmosis. Through sharing a space together, that just does not happen over Zoom and Slack. There are companies like Roam that I've tested, Roam AI, that is essentially trying to be the next generation of an online AI powered, office. So it's trying to replace Slack and Zoom and whatnot by having an AI office powered of sorts experience. Even that falls, I think it's a really cool idea. I think people should check it out, but I don't have any skin in the game, by the way. I just think the leaders of that company are pretty cool. But I think even then it just falls short of just that osmosis, just grabbing a cup of coffee, between things, or having the sales meeting, but you're all together, or having the dev stand up, but you're all together and you're looking at a computer screen together, and there's just different energy that happens. So you can't transfer energy over a screen as easy as you can in person.
That is very true.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I thought this conversation was going to go different. I'm not going to lie. I thought you were all for it.
Yeah, I mean, the efficiency of it is great, and I love to lower the expense. My investors aren't spending money on an office, right? But at the same time, that can be seen as an investment in itself. It doesn't have to be looked at as an expense, an investment of collaboration. And magic happens when good people collaborate. People are changed by the environment that they're in. And so if you go to a work environment and it is incredibly, toxic, changes you. If you go to a work environment where it's motivating and you're inspired to be better because you're there, the music's right, the lighting's right, the layout is good, it's got good feng shui, the people's vibe is there, the leadership is great, it's collaborative, it's informative, it holds people accountable, it's innovative. Like that's a place that you just become a better person. So environment really, really matters, and it's hard to create some sorts of environments in a remote work style. That's all.
Yeah, I can attest to that for sure. Me personally, working remotely for over a decade, gosh, probably longer than that. I've just become so accustomed to it, you know, but it is really nice to be able to have, interactions with people in real life. IRL, as the kids say these days.
Yeah, exactly. Like my commute is a 30-second walk to my back, office back here, right? So
yeah. Well, hey, listen, the era of running a business on a gut feeling, I think some people say are ending. I don't think so. I think more so now that we've talked about that this era is going to be very leaning towards right brain. We're moving into this era of empirical predictive execution, but still very, creative space, which actually I did want to ask one last question real quick. These new positions that have been created within the AI, prompt engineer, AI automation expert, do you think these are going away? and it's just going to be completely taken over by AI as is, or it's going to be more like what is it called? Like being able to speak to it conversationally. So in layman's terms, yeah.
Well, I think, you know, and this isn't just my prediction, but I think the prediction that essentially the IT department, because you're HR for your AI employees, you know, if you want to think about it that way, you know, that an IT department used to just manage the software. I think an IT department of the future will manage your AI employees, completely different sort of IT department, right? And I think that your department heads, this is the last generation of CEOs that manage an all human workforce, to put it another way.
Okay, that's interesting.
Every CEO from here on forward will be managing
actually.
an AI employee and a human employee workforce from here on forward. So that's something of a total dynamic change. And so the work that we're doing at Huzi is not just trying to build platforms. I'm trying to like help corporations, organizations, businesses get their culture ready for an AI integrated workforce. And you just can't deliver AI tools and give your workforce AI tools and expect magic. The culture has to be set first. The expectations have to be set first. It has to build trust, build strategy, and increase AI fluency in order for that to work.
So do you think that AI fluency is going to deter people? Well, not deter people, I guess kind of, because like people that are jumping on the bandwagon now of learning these new skills, you know, it's probably going to be sound or seem disheartening in the next 2 years, 1 year, that it's just going to be virtually non-existent.
No, I think that in our lifetime, Mo, in our lifetime, like I keep saying, the best of no matter what job you're doing, you're going to be safe. So if you're really good at whatever it is you're doing, an accountant, a coder, even a creative graphic designer, a marketer, like Intel just laid off a whole bunch of people in the marketing department, right? But they didn't lay off everybody. Who'd they keep? The best of the best.
That's true.
Right? So this isn't just a theory. If you're really good at your job, you're going to be irreplaceable for a long time. And in fact, your boss or your company will rely on you to help manage the process and train the AI workflows and manage them and keep best practices instilled in them. So if you're the best of the best, doesn't matter what you are, you're going to be safe for a long time, in our whole lifetime for sure.
That gives rise to becoming better at what it is that you do or passionate about, what have you. So that's really exciting. Not as dark as I've been reading on the interwebs. Thank you, man. Thank you so much for being here for another week. Make sure you guys follow Eric Post on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, wherever he is on the interwebs. Where's your book located? What's your website?
I would say people should
again?
read the book, man. I just leaked a little bit on my personal Facebook page. It's making an impact already. It's Eric Post, ERICPOST.ai. You can go there. It's totally free for now. I am going to be putting it on Amazon and Audible. I'm going to be charging for it eventually, but for now I want people to just like check it out and give me feedback on it, see how it impacts your thinking. It's not like a normal business book, man. I wrote some poetry in there, wrote some short stories in there, got some frameworks that are a little bit different, little parables. I didn't want to write this boring sort of preachy, business book about AI. So it's sort of a right brain book approach to it, trying to set the stage for self-discovery so people can really feel for themselves how they think about it instead of just being swept up in the river like we were talked about earlier. And I think that, creating that stillness in yourself, reading a book like that, it's a short read, might be between 30 minutes and an hour, I think would reframe a lot for people. So go check it out, please, and let me know what you think about it.
Yeah, I urge everybody to do it. It's phenomenal. I read it twice. Thank you for sharing that with me as well. We'll see everybody next week. Thanks for stopping by.
Cheers, buddy.